Hello, welcome to WLOO CATV's Resident Artist Program. Today, we will be having a virtual interview with former Waterloo resident Jinx Davis. On WLOO's Resident Artist Series, we strive to give the viewer a complete picture of the artist as a person as a whole. We would like to explore their early formative influences, go into different phases in their artistic development, and give the viewer an idea of their background, their life, their times. Jinx Davis has had such an incredibly rich life that it would take several hours to fully do her artistic development and her artistic path justice. Instead of taking several hours, WLOO has decided to give the viewer an overview of the life and times of Jinx Davis. Jinx Davis grew up in a very artistic family and devoted her life to the fine arts since childhood. Jinx attended college in Honolulu and earned a Master of Fine Arts in acting and theater. Jinx is the sort of creative person who wants to share her art, and, most importantly, she is driven to making art accessible to others and encouraging their own creative spark. It makes sense that Jinx would be drawn to the performing arts at first, such as theater and storytelling. Jinx Davis earned a lot of professional recognition, including acting with many famous performers and receiving numerous laurels for her performance and acting skills. She hadn't received any formal artistic training, but her paintings have been exhibited in numerous galleries and have sold for hundreds of dollars. She has lived and worked in many places in the US, Asia, and Eastern Europe. Jinx lived in Waterloo in the 1980s and 1990s. She owned the Mode Theater. She was active in several forms of theater during that period, such as plays, storytelling, one-woman and two-woman shows. Jinx performed at many venues, including Watertown and Madison stages. The Mode Theater held numerous plays and concerts. Audience participation was very important to Jinx. She encouraged her audiences to participate in performances at the Mode. She gave storytelling sessions to local school children. Performances about topical subjects, such as AIDS and equal access for disabled people, were also important to her. Her art must reflect life. Jinx became director of the Living Arts Corporation shortly before leaving Waterloo. As Jinx's skills as a performance artist matured, she began exploring the visual arts. This went along with a new phase in her life, during which she moved to Colorado and focused on the Living Arts Corporation. Jinx's passion for exploring and expressing the connection between art, cultural diversity, and social justice became refined and focused during this period and through the Living Arts Corporation. Jinx entertained the public with 24-foot puppets commissioned from carnival artists in Trinidad, West Indies, and organized many programs and projects to benefit veterans, school children, victims of domestic violence, and public schools, all through the visual and performing arts and through the Living Arts Corporation. Jinx was inspired to travel to Southeast Asia, eventually immigrating to Cambodia, and a few years later to Zagreb, Croatia, where she currently resides. And now, without further ado, let me introduce Jinx Davis. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Jinx.
Oh,
How's
thank
the
you.
weather in Croatia?
It's very hot today, very, very hot, but I think it's hot all over the world.
Well,
Yeah, it's about 100 degrees now.
Oh my.
Here. So,
Is that normal for Zagreb at this time of year?
no, not really. It is hot in the summer for at least several months. And there's also a tradition here where everyone has family homes from ancestors on the coast. So the city, the capital city where I'm at, is kind of deserted because everybody went to the coast to be by the sea.
Oh my. That must be really interesting. And do they board up their shops and things, or there must still be something
No,
happening?
it's just there's less people, and Croatia is a country that just likes leisure life.
I've heard it's
So
very beautiful.
yes, it is. It is a lovely country.
Before we get into actually looking at the art you're doing right now, I'd like to ask you where you draw your inspiration from. What is your muse?
Laura, it's the same thing that I did with theater. Art is nothing other than the expression and the feelings and the emotions and the mind swelling of whoever is producing it. And so what my task is in any form that I create anything is to just live in the moment and let the mind deal with just what the mind is spewing. I don't plan anything.
For you, it comes from within, would you say? You feel
Yes,
moved and it pours out?
yes, for the most part, yes. Since I had no artistic training per se, other than being around great artists all my life, visually and watching them paint, etc., or sculpt. The one thing that I am having to do, because I am trying to raise money for the nonprofit, is to do techniques and styles that I normally would never address. You know, things that for my taste are too either sentimental or soft or whatever, but those are the things that many people like. So I'm doing that freely and enjoyably because I'm learning from it. It's how you learn. It's like anything. If you have to ride a bike, you just keep falling until you get it straight. It's the same thing.
And if you really want to ride that bike, you're just going to keep getting on it.
Yes,
Yeah.
every day.
So this kind of anticipates the next question I had for you, which is what influences are currently guiding your growth as an artist? And I'm already hearing necessity and a desire to raise money for nonprofits. Is that right?
Well, the fascinating thing about I've always painted, but usually I painted big things for the big walls that I had in offices and the theater and etc. on big canvases, mostly abstracts for that matter. But when COVID hit, I happened to be in Croatia because my son was going to have a child, and the family wanted me here. And within a week or two, COVID hit, and the entire shutdown occurred. And then within just another couple of weeks, we had a horrendous earthquake here. So people stayed inside, and there was no socializing, and it's a country that meets every morning for coffee and talks for 3 or 4 hours over a tiny little espresso cup, and that's just part of their social conditioning. So it was a time where I was in a brand new country, and all of these things occurred, and I was living in a very tiny, tiny one-room place. It was beautiful, but it was tiny. So I'm on the days that the big building supply company was open, I went to the outskirts of town and bought a huge box of cement tiles because I had absolutely no space to store anything, no money to buy murals, all canvases that were already woodened and fitted, and no real money for anything other than cheap paints and watercolor that you can buy at a grocery store. And since I had no storage space and nowhere to hang anything and no real means to use a lot of equipment because I couldn't afford to buy a lot, and things are much more expensive in this tiny country. It's not like America where you can grab stuff, and we don't have Goodwills or anything like that where you can go grab an old painting with a frame on it and reuse it and repaint it. None of those things are available here. So I started painting, and I was, my landlord is a very fine artist, and she is on my site, Maya's work, and her husband too. And they had an incredible home in the city center that is full of all of Croatian's greatest artists, the originals. And she was very gracious about introducing me to this group of very creative people that basically were very, very forceful to culture during Yugoslavia's time under Tito. And then, of course, things changed with the enormous war, and it was awful during the Yugoslavian war. And Croatia didn't hurt nearly as badly as Bosnia, but it was awful for everybody. So I had these influences going on, and I just started without judgment. So I just managed to buy, paints like this, which are just little strange ink oil paintings, alcohol, media ink, glass ink, things like that, cheap acrylic bottles that you could get, at a paint store. And I just started painting. And then I take a photograph of what I paint, and then I wash everything off.
I understand a major challenge for visual artists is storage and display for their creations, and I think you came up with an ingenious solution. You basically surrendered the requirement for maintaining a permanent physical presence for your paintings, and you went digital. Would you please describe this process in detail for us? You have your tiles, you have the paints that you could find, and then you paint on one of those tiles, and the tiles are like 14 inches by 14 inches, or
I don't know. No, they're not. They're a basic rectangle,
okay.
Small rectangle size. And I reuse them, so sometimes you'll see in a painting the same scratches from, from a previous painting. And it's kind of interesting. But what I think is meaningful is that I have some artist friends that are doing magnificent temporary work, and temporary being that it only exists for a short while before climate and weather and water changes it and dissipates it. So after moving from the United States, my code of honor that I'm trying to live by is that there's nothing permanent and there's nothing certain. And if we can embrace that, all of us embrace that, it is a very freeing thing, because then we don't collect, and we won't be such consumers, and we also will have crafted within ourselves the flexibility to change with the horrendous changes that happen in a lifetime, not to mention a climate in the world's time. So even if I had a space, and even if I had the money to buy big canvases or have them created for me, I'm stuck to this because I think it's essential and important, whether anybody else does or not, because an artist, in truth, is just painting for themselves.
In truth, it has to come out, is how
Yeah.
I understand it. It must come out, one way
Yeah.
or another. What goes on in your mind has to be expressed.
Yes.
When you make your temporary paintings, you decide at some point that the painting you're working on is complete, and then you said you take a photograph of it. Then what happens? What happens? You wash the painting off, I'm assuming, after you photograph it.
Yes. I immediately wash it off, so it's off my mind.
Okay.
And then when I choose, I'll take that photograph into Photoshop. Now, I'm not a good technician, and in Photoshop, it's a very complicated piece of equipment and software. So I use just the minimal tools that I can remember how to use. And I try to get it as large with a resolution that is still decent for printing, and then I resize it so that people can have any size they want, small to large. And then sometimes I play with lighting in there because I can do a little bit of that in Photoshop.
Sure.
But that's what happens then. And then I save them, and my computer then has on a Google Drive, all of the images and the mock-ups. And then of course, I have to pay for mock-up services so that when I put them on the website, you can see them in a home environment or a business environment or a workshop or a bathroom or a bedroom or whatever. So
How
that's
do
how
you
they
decide which photographs are going to get onto your website?
When I remember them or when I have the time to go through them. That's how.
Now,
I'm not attached to much.
Sure. You do have a Facebook page, and
Yeah.
I've noticed you will put a photograph up there and ask what people think.
Yeah.
So do you have other ways like that where you can sort of test the waters with people before you put the photograph up on your website?
Oh, it's interesting. I'm not testing the waters, but I am fascinated by the discussion.
Ah,
And that's what anyone needs, whether they're writing, whether they're working in a business like you want the conversation. And I'm not real happy about social media, and I don't do the Twitter stuff and all of that. Not that I'm against it, it's just that it consumes so much of one's awareness and one's time. But the fun thing is that part of it is getting older, and people have found me from the long ago past, i.e., this wonderful group that I'm speaking with right now. And that's a joy, because when you connect again with people you knew 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and they're still alive and they're still functioning whatever constraints they have in the world, you get again the understanding of what our personal evolutions are. And also you get a sense of community that you can't have if you're not staying in the same place and, knowing a group of people consistently. So it's been a joy.
that
I
is
really, really
the
like
plus
it.
side. Yes, that is the plus side of social media.
Yes.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with everything that you said about it. I wonder if we could get a guided tour of your website by you.
Sure. Sure.
Great.
Are you up to that?
Great. I am definitely up to get it.
Good.
The wonderful thing about having an artist give a guided tour of their gallery is the little extra tidbits of information that I get about whatever it is that I'm looking at. And
Good.
I have to tell you that my father was very much into the media arts and the performance arts. His big thing was performance poetry. And
Yes.
he actually resented the practice of getting up to read a poem, and at first by way of introducing the poem, explaining to the listeners what the poem was about. He said for him, the poem is about the reaction that the listener has,
Yes.
and he didn't want to bias the listener with his own explanation of what they should be getting out of the poem. So if you feel that way about your art, I respect that.
Well, your father's right, dear.
Yes, yes, I totally respect that. So I'm really not asking you to tell me how to.
No, I'll be glad to share. No
you know,
problem.
just whatever you want to say about the piece is
Thank you.
just fine. Thank you. So I think we have the front page up right now.
Okay.
The Just Jinx printable art for charity.
Yes,
There are
that's the
specific-
home page, and
Yes.
that's the page that introduces people to what printable art is, because even though printable art is a huge industry, and it's overwhelming now how big it is, and it's a very hard industry to get into Google properly so that people see it. But printable art is popular because it allows people to have prints on their own that they wouldn't afford anywhere else. The reason that I'm also very, very attached to it is that there's nothing worse in the cultures that have a lot of museums and a lot of galleries than an outsider who's not part of that community walking in and feeling ignored or like a stranger or judged. And that happens a lot around the world. It doesn't happen in places like Cambodia or the places that are using art to reinvent themselves. That's a real collective of all kinds of people, from the farmers of the fields to part of the old royalty, for that matter. But it does happen in most Western societies, and I don't like that. I've been dragged all my life to galleries, and I don't like the feel of them. I like the work, but I don't like the fact. It goes back to why I ran the theater the way that I did, Laura. I don't believe in elitism, period. My audience wants to be farmers, drag queens, sitting next to policemen, sitting next to foreigners that just arrived, sitting next to an ambassador from Bosnia, sitting next to a mother, sitting next to a little girl, sitting next to someone deaf, sitting next. I want that. I'm not interested in elitism. That's not the function of art. Art is communication.
To the widest audience.
Yes.
The most diverse audience.
Diverse, right.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what the front page is about. And there's a coupon there so that everyone knows they can have a free one that can afford $15. And I don't assume that people can afford $15 because right before I came on with you, a gentleman, I have a lot of friends in Zimbabwe and other areas of African nations, and they're struggling. They're fantastic artists, far better than I'll be in 5 lifetimes. Most of them are sculptors from the Shona sculpting tradition, which is the newest contemporary art form of the 20th century, the new Shona sculpture movement. So some of them just need food. So that's my impetus, because life has allowed me to know people from many different places and many different ways of living. And when you are embraced by that, and also when you've experienced it yourself, then you just don't do the things that other people do because they don't feel right.
And that is a wonderful rule to live by.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which tab should we click on first for the website?
Why don't you go to printables, and then you'll come up with a whole list of categories. But if you want to do it, you can do it by categories, or you can just hit all principles, and you'll see probably the very first one will be the one I put on last night.
Abstract designs is the first
No,
main choice?
hit all printables.
Okay, so just click on all principles. All right, there we are. The Friend Left Behind is the first one that I see.
Yes, that's a very recent one. And I'll tell you the story on that, and I have no problem sharing it at all, because it's one of the things about living in Cambodia is that there are no strangers. And language, even though I never was able to speak Khmer, and I can't speak Croatian either, is not a barrier if you walk with an openness. So there was a lady that I always saw down by the river in an area that's called WLOO. And sometimes I saw her at the open markets where you buy fish and vegetables and all of that. But after a couple of times seeing, we reached out to each other without words, except the classic ones of the gestures in that society. And it became a routine. And every 2 weeks or so, we would just find each other and we would meet. We would meet down by the river and sit for hours, and we would just hold each other's hands.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know her name. We told each other our names and we talked nonstop. How much we understood is not even the point, because we shared a lot through holding hands.
That's a great story. I really, really like that. And then when you left Cambodia, she's the friend you left behind, right?
Yeah, because I didn't even know how to connect with her.
Sure. Is there another image you'd like to draw our attention to?
Let's go to, well, one that's real pop. My watercolor flowers are always popular. We've got Integrity of a Flower, which is 3 down, which is just one big blossom.
Yes.
And those are fun for me because I paint also to release. So if I've had a tiring day, or if I've been trying to write and it's not coming through, I pull out the paints and I just paint. And it releases the tensions that I've held for trying to accomplish something, or whatever the day's activities were that exhausted me. So that's one of them. I think the painting probably took 20 minutes, and I think it probably took an hour to properly do in Photoshop. It was one of the simple ones, but it just came out. And then the one beneath that is just another wildflower, and a lot of people like that. I'm trying to learn how to make things soft when they're on a larger scale. So when that's printed out, it actually has bleeds of just color without lines. Mm-hmm. And it's almost translucent. And I'm trying to learn how to keep drama within an image, but soften it so that it kind of is moving through time or space. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm trying to learn how to do it.
I think you described it very well, actually, and I really enjoy that. It captures just what it's like, just looking at wildflowers, and they're the ones that you see closer, and they're more crisp in focus, and then in the background they're hazier, and it creates a mood, I think.
Right. And then just scrolling down, another new one is of a Chinese young woman called Alertness, because my son spent many, many, many years in China, and I was over there at wonderful times. And I took a lot of pictures and photographs of friends and people I met. And this one came up in one of those silly Facebook, remember this?
Oh, sure. Yes, I know what you mean.
So this is not what she looks like, but it's what she felt like to me, because she was the most attentive of all the young women that I had met. Her focus and and it wasn't constrained intention. It was as if she literally lived to be attentive. So I tried to capture that in some way. And then below that is Repose. I'm trying to do, again, how to learn watercolor effectively without thinking and without planning a design and trying to sketch first. I don't sketch at all anymore. I just start and see where it goes. And then if I'm lucky, I stop before I ruin it.
Freehand. So this sketch or this watercolor of this face and expression, completely freehand, no mock-ups, no preliminary sketches.
Nothing.
This is what you put is what we see.
And then if you go down 2 more, you'll see something called Bedtime Lantern. And I painted that because I usually get he's now 3-year-old grandson once a week for a pajama party sleepover and a full day. And we have a nightly ritual which I think is essential for children, no matter where you live in the world. There's reasons we have rituals. Mm-hmm. In not just religion, but in life. There's profound impact of rituals. And he will not skip a single step of the ritual. Uh-huh. He knows every single step, as children do.
Yes.
And his ritual is, we give him a great shower, and he plays with the water and the toys in the shower. And then we get him in his pajamas, and then we go to the bookcase and pull out the books that we're going to read that night. And then he gets the lighter, the big, safe, long lighter, and he lights the night lantern by the little bed that he sleeps in. And then we play with our fingers with the candle shadows against the white walls of the bed while we're on the bed. Then we read our books with a lamp on, a small lamp on, and then we keep the candle on until it burns out. It's just a small little candle. And if you skip that candle, he gets very irksome, because that's an important thing. And I taught him how to light his candle properly, well, a year ago, maybe even earlier. And he does it very carefully, almost like it's a little sacred, tea set from the Japanese culture of understanding the ritual. So I painted that. It's not my grandson as the little boy, but that's exactly what he does at night. He sits and looks right at the camera.
That was your inspiration for this painting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What a lovely, lovely background to that story. I think we all know our children's rituals, that they had.
Yes.
Don't
yes.
deviate.
Okay, then I play with abstracts. I play with metaphors. There's one called "What Hangs Over Your Heads," 2 down, and that's just a watercolor plane with. It emerged and made me realize what I was doing.
Oh, I love it.
It's just what we all carry, that immense, heavy baggage of what's hanging over our heads in our minds all the time, everywhere. And it's like we're all metaphorically these people, going across a sandy seashore, pulling a huge chunk of chest or luggage or so that's the kind of thing that just again occurs. And I normally don't even know what I've done until I look at it and say, oh, that's what I was doing.
Oh my.
And that's kind of neat.
That is very neat. And again, no preliminary sketches. You painted this with the paints you had on hand on a piece of glazed tile.
Yes, and this time I used alcohol ink, so you can drop tiny amounts of alcohol onto the paint, and it spreads and does its own thing. So as long as you use a medium and you let it do what it does without trying to manipulate it too much, it will tell you. In fact, it's no different than the sculptors that I know, mostly the Shona sculptors. They quarry a lot of wonderful stone in Zimbabwe. And they quarry it themselves with hand tools, and they get it out of the mountain, and then they drag it to their village or wherever they're carving, or their homes. And they let the stone tell the story. They listen to the stone because they know the stone has the story. And even though I'm not working with earthly objects, I'm not working with, I do work with clay, which is the earth, and I do the same thing with clay. I let it kind of do what it wants to do, mostly because I'm horrible at throwing pots. But it's for me, it's the same thing. Don't impose. If I were a great crafts artist in terms of knowing how to do things, I might not feel that way. But since I'm undisciplined in craft, this is my avenue to pull out any contribution of a tiny revelation that I have in life. So.
Well, I think letting the alcohol in drops on the paint medium worked really well with that particular piece.
Yes, it did.
There is this dark cloud-like appearance, which that technique really brought out so well.
And then if you go down, I think 3 more, Lauren, there's a defender, which is a hummingbird. And I have friends who designed a hummingbird feeder that's a helmet where the hummingbirds come. It's called the Hum Viewer.
Oh my!
Right? It's incredible. And my son works with them too in uh, getting uh, their product manufactured. Anyway, so I've done some artwork for them about hummingbirds as ways that they can just give to their customers and use for whatever reasons. And I did it just because I'm so proud of them for, working so hard at this. But I couldn't quite release after I get sent gobs of hummingbirds to them. And then another one emerged a couple of weeks ago. So this is one that isn't theirs. And also because hummingbirds are some of the most incredible creatures in the world, and this is the time for them. And they are the metaphors for being defenders of their nests and their territory, and their struggle for arriving through their long, long, long migrations. And when I lived in the Colorado Rocky Mountains, our hummingbirds were sacred to us, and they come back every year to the same place.
Oh
And I
my.
miss those. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Colorado has some gorgeous hummingbird species too. Very,
Yes.
very colorful, and lots of coppers and
Yes.
such. So is this a Croatian hummingbird in the picture?
No, they don't have a single hummingbird in Croatia.
Oh,
To my knowledge, no one has ever even heard of them except for when they see a picture. Oh, that's a hummingbird, those little birds.
huh.
But there are no hummingbirds here. There's mountains here and the Adriatic Sea, which is gorgeous, and then just a lot of fields. We have a lot of gorgeous fields of lavender and things like that when you get out of the city.
Hmm.
But because was an agrarian culture for many centuries. This is a culture that's been around forever. America is a couple hundred years old. This is thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. So you go out and you feel like you're back in a whole nother period of time. They still have rock fences for barriers and all of that. So, but yes, Croatia is very lovely in many, many ways.
Sounds
Like they have their problems like all cultures.
sure.
But, and then, of course, right after that, I did do a painting of people like seascapes, and they keep asking me for them. So I paint them even though I would never choose them on my own. And this is one of the Croatian coast. And I've got a lot of seascapes. And then after that is called the singing tree, and it's a little bit more of the colorful ways of looking at a tree. I find myself doing things that have to do with how I'm trying to teach and help my grandson see things when we go on walks together.
Ah,
It's wonderful when I'm with him at a playground or something. We can actually get the children so excited just about finding a rock that has a different texture on it, or a leaf or something like that. And children that, are just there and I don't speak Croatian, they don't speak English. We just start this wonderful way of sharing little tiny pieces of nature. And there are some parks with lovely trees near me. So I'm trying to get my grandson to, when he goes on a walk, find a way to look at something and see beyond it. See not just the tree, but see the colors that come through the leaves, the shadows, the brilliance, the texture, and all of that. And that's what children need, because all art is trying to do is help us see.
mm-hmm.
Instead of seeing a tree, which we label, I mean, what is a tree? That's the stupidest thing in the world. There's 1,000 things a tree is.
Yes.
I'm trying to teach them to go beyond a name and a symbol. So I do crap like that for that reason.
Well, good for you. And it's so important for children too. The minds are still open.
And then I do a lot of abstracts, but we can go into those later. The two down is the sky paints itself, and that's just because how can we not, no matter where we live in the world, be in total awe of our skies? And Wisconsin has gorgeous ones.
Oh, yes.
Every place in the world does. Every place does. And so I try to catch the sky. And I've got a lot of sky type things. And then if you go 2 down, you'll see morning rises. And that again is where I'm just trying to learn how to do simplicity in softness. Because I'm not good at actual art, in terms of making a replica of something, knowing how to actually do a face or knowing how to do a hand or knowing how to do a real flower.
I just call that representational art, where your interpretive art is what you do.
Yes, because I just want to get
labels.
Feelings out about what
Yeah.
what going through a garden does.
Yes.
And that has to do with just color, shapes, light.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to do with knowing what the flower is, or knowing how many petals it has, or any of that. It just has to do with what a flower experiences from dusk until dawn.
How the light shines through the petals.
Yeah.
The luminosity. And
Yeah.
I think this piece really shows that luminous quality petals get when they're backlit by gentle light.
And then if you go way down 4 or 5, you'll see a title called Exhausted. And I'm trying to learn this style of simplicity. Not the way it's done when it's done digitally on an Apple pad, by these wonderful programs. I would love to have those, but I don't have them. So I want to see if I can just do them with cheap acrylic paint and a few paint brushes, but capture that newer style of boldness that marketing and graphics has now got the world into, which serves a very good purpose, and some of it's brilliant work. So this piece is just a reminder of the fact that the majority of the world are hard workers and live barely within their means, and they're exhausted, and we should bow to them. I have a real hard time being around people that don't deeply appreciate the servers that bring them things or change their sheets or offer them their tastes across the counter. I've been on the other side of that counter many times, and so that's just a reminder that we all work really hard, and that alone is a red badge of courage.
I agree. I like the look in her eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting expression, because although you title it Exhausted, there's a strength and
Yes.
a directness and a feeling that this woman is going to endure no matter
Yes.
what. And I like that. It's not this tired, dejected figure. There's still strength there. She's just
Right.
using it all.
And those women are there in every culture, in every period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only been recently when they're even given any dignity at all, and still they're downplayed, for the most part, in all cultures, including America.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like her eyes too. They came out nicely. And then We Walk in the Fog, which is right after that. I'm just again trying to find the metaphors for how we exist. We're so separate.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Both America is very separated from each other, and in Croatia, because their clan is what is important, their family and is an extended family is what is important. They normally do not even address strangers on any level. I mean, some do, and it's wonderful, serendipitous when it happens. But for the most part, in their mind, they're being polite to ignore you. But for me, as I walk as a complete stranger through the cities and the towns and the neighborhoods, I no matter where I am, I pick up on the fact that we're kind of in the mist and we don't see each other at all. Now, that's not true in countries that are hungry. Those countries, people attract to each other, for reconciliation, for help, for encouragement, for just the fact that they have to. collectively find a way to survive and express and change and evolutionize themselves out of whatever depths they came from, which is usually war, and things like that, the horrible atrocities that happen all over the world right now. So that's kind of just another metaphor, probably overused. We walk in a fog. And then the next one after that's another seascape. But the only reason I like this picture is because to me, it's not solitude. Solitude is not something that we should fear. Solitude is the only real way we can go through life in many ways, even though we learn enormous lessons from all of our relationships. It is from the friendship of the solitude inside ourselves that we learn the most. Well, you can go down to sisters, and that's just my attempt at remembering young children that I've dealt with or worked with around the world. And also because when you live in other cultures, you understand the joy of how they carry their past with them through their attire, through their traditions, through their rituals. And America has those things in many ways, but we're so young, they're very different than the rest of the world, because the rest of the world is pulling all the many generations behind them, with them each time that they go through a ritual. And Cambodia taught me that a lot, proper greetings and all of that. So that's just another way of discussing or trying to relate that idea. And then if you go to the next page, page 2, we've got an abstract, we don't care about that, but let's go down to the veins of life, just so they see another total exploration. Now, when you see that, it is not new, but it's interesting that people think that it's new. This is something brand new. This kind of sketching has been done forever through time. So I just decided to play with it with white ink. And I just put the background in black once I got into Photoshop. Okay. But what happens is when you allow yourself to just let the hand move without trying to do an eye, or without trying to do the nose and the mouth, or as I usually do, I turn the upside down if I'm looking at something, and I paint without naming what I'm painting. So that if I look at a face on my phone from a photograph, I turn the photograph upside down and I just try to capture shapes. So that's what I did with this. And I like it. It turned out interesting. Now, probably nobody will like it, but I liked it. And then the run immediately down from that, soft as cotton, as I have lots and lots of these floral pieces that I'm just, again, trying to do with translucency and gentle softness so that they become almost ethereal. Mm-hmm. And then 2 down is strutting, because most of the people from America that follow my artwork are not much into understanding contemporary art, whereas ironically the people in Cambodia and other parts of the world understand intuitively the contemporary abstracts that are being created. And that rooster for me it struts, or chicken, or whatever you want to call it. It struts, and I love it. Nobody has said a word about it, so I'm assuming they don't like it because it does look like a chicken. And then if you go down to 3 down to a portrait called Not a Fool. Once again, as I try to understand the people around me and the people that I've known and what what their presence generates to me, either in memory or in presence. And this one came from a man that is disabled, and he's amazing, and he's fighting a very harsh disease. But it's his spirit. And he's, through his real physical suffering, he has the best sense of humor in the world. And he's not a fool.
Yeah, no.
He's not a fool at all, no matter what people may think when they see him or interact with him. He's bluntly full of the greatest wisdom in the world, and he has the humorous attitude of not even caring if you get it or not. So that piece I like a lot.
Yeah.
And then the Two Down, I Can Fly, that piece was very, very popular online, just because, again, it's soft and it's tender about children. And a lot of people I know have lost children or their grandchildren. And so this one was liked across cultures because of a lot of child deaths that have been around. So, but that again happened just by the paint doing what the paint wanted to do, and then forming what I could fine tune a bit. And then down one more, Perplexed. This is the style that, to me, people look at the strange abstractions of face deconstruction, human deconstruction, and they don't get it. They think that it's ugly in many, many ways. But what artists have used from long, long periods of time is that if you do, you can express far more if you don't do representational art. Because you capture something so strikingly. They knew this in stone carvings. They knew this in the African art that Picasso stole to do all of his life. Or appropriated, not stole,
yes,
but appropriated.
Appropriated, yes.
Because there is nothing new under the sun. So it's not, you can't steal art. It's always been there, it's always will be, and it'll always be recaptured over and over and over again. So this piece I really like because to me it's far more expressive than if I tried to paint a woman that was perplexed. So, and then the one after that is just me trying to learn simplicity again. I'm not a graphic artist, and I don't have the programs to create graphic art, so I have to do it, just with abstracts on the tile. But sometimes I get it. Ironically, when I try to do something simple and bold, I usually wash it off, so I don't have a lot of it. Because it has to be controlled, and I'm not real good at that. I'm very, very poor at controlling things.
I think you hit it there. I really do.
And then after that, we can skip the eye. The one gleaming is a portrait of how I saw my grandson one day when he was 2 years old, thinking of him as being a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old, because so that's my perspective of him in the future. Hopefully he won't look like that, but anyway, it's what I felt. So that's in honor of him, because he's a special human being, and he's taught me a lot, and I'm very glad to be in his presence. And then after that, if we scoot down, let's scoot all the way down to Moving Through Space, which is just the lines, the line drawing of abstract, as opposed to the more representational ones before.
Oh my.
Moving Through Space, again, is just about movement, because if you just let your hand move, it will create. And if we take that process and look at it as our lives, if we just move, both internally in our thoughts and externally in our bodies, we move. And the process of moving brings enormous amounts of new ways of being. So that I like that piece. Other people probably don't. And then right after that, I do a lot of lotus. I don't do lotus because it's this big, wonderful symbol that the world likes and is sentimental about it. I do it because there was nothing better than the tradition of the flower that comes from the mud in Cambodia.
Is this the
Because
lotus in
through
every
the
heart that you're talking about now?
a lotus in every heart,
Yeah,
right?
thank you.
So I have a lot of lotus ones because they're so important to honoring what the Cambodians were so kind and generous in sharing with me about their culture and their villages and all of that. So um, that's a piece, and there's many lotuses on the site. And then right after that is explosion in orange, and that's just another way of seeing a flower without trying to be representational.
Oh yes, you have a
And
sequence of them, number 1, 2, 3, and 4.
yes, I do. They're not. Yeah, I do. Actually, there's probably a sequence about 20 of them in my computer. And then I'm having to sometimes do things just because people are asking me, and I know that I have a hard time saying no to anything that I'm asked. And I don't think that's a tragic flaw. I think that's okay. But it also serves me to do things that I would never do. And so bushy fox is something I would never do. But I'm trying to do animals now because animal paintings are so important to children, and they're so important to schoolrooms, and they're so important to every kind of environment. Plus, in the cultures that have the time and the money, pets are important. And as opposed to the cultures that have to eat those animals, you
Right.
know. So I'm trying to get a little more of just the animal kingdom on. But what I haven't really learned to do yet is capture the animals' attitudes that well. And hopefully that will come in time as I try to do more. And then if you go down to Majesty, which is just a single flower, I painted that during um, the whole bit with the Queen.
Ah,
And it's because I don't think anyone should wear a crown, and it's not that I have any disrespect at all for the royalties of any country. Um, I just don't think humans are to wear crowns. Nature wears them for us, and that's where they deserve to be. So I just tried to do a striking thing that looked a bit like a glowing crown on the flower.
you,
And then right after that, I'm trying to understand uh, male, not male. I'm not trying to understand men. I'm trying to understand structure, male structure. And in Croatia, there's a portion of the population that's extremely tall and handsome, both men and women. That goes back through ancestral roots, through Dalmatian, etc. But sometimes these men not only have the structure of a sculpture, um, but they also have a few of them that I have met have an incredible sense of timelessness, as if they did exist 1,000 years ago. And this gentleman kind of made me feel that way. Um, he didn't wear his handsomeness on his sleeve. He didn't wear his height as superiority. He just reminded me of someone who's walked through time. So I like that one. And then on the next page, which is page 3, and more flowers, more flowers, more flowers. Um, we can go to from the depths. Uh, what I'm struggling with is I think many of us that have lived full lives have a remaining prejudice. And that remaining prejudice is that we pass judgment on truly beautiful human beings, physically beautiful human beings. And I'm living in a culture now in their city where they're prominent. And I see women who spend hours preparing to go into the public world. And they don't even look real, they're so gorgeous. So what I'm trying to address is my prejudice, because I won't be a free person until I'm able to embrace the female beauty of the world without discouraging it or labeling it or being jealous of it or discarding it or whatever. So I've just been trying to get a lot of paintings that somehow allow me to honor that both the internal and the external beauty that does exist in the human body without judgment. I think it was Bell Hook, the great feminist, the African-American great feminist, that wrote, "We will never stop our prejudice until we embrace beautiful, beautiful women." And that's a hard one for us because it's used for merchandising, commodities, it's used for power, it's used for superficial, stupid things, etc. But when a body is born that is absolutely exquisite, it in itself is the sculpture that must be honored.
I agree. And people that are truly beautiful, physically beautiful, have very hard lives.
Yes, they do, or very superficial lives.
Yes, yes. I have had some dear friends who were incredibly beautiful, and their lives were dreadful, just dreadful. They were surrounded by envy and exploitation, and everybody just wanted to use them, thought of them as trophies. Very hard lives. They pay for their beauty.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you see, you're hitting a nerve with me there. I agree with what you're saying. And
But
thank
you are
for
so
that
right,
painting.
Laura. They are. And some of them enjoy that, and some of them painfully learn how horrible that is, to be perceived that way through a population and through the male gaze and through the power structure and all the rest. It's a very strange life.
That's why many die
I'll never
young.
experience it, but
Yep, there's a
and then if you go two more down, I think you'll see In the Shadows. And that was also inspired by a friend in Cambodia, because in Cambodia you sit around little fires or you ride to the temples late at night and just sit by the river and look at the temples and the sky. And this is one woman who I watched for a long while when we were together, just sitting by the river, and the darkness, just the shadows spoke not just of her, but of the place and the time and the culture. And again, you felt all of it at once. And when you are having those little nanoseconds in life where you can feel something all at once, not just the time of it's 3:15, but the time of all time. And when you can feel the emotions of not just yourself, but the collective people that have been around you forever and a day and beyond through centuries. And when you can grasp that moment in just a tiny little bit and you see it in someone alive, it is like, oh my God, what a gift. So that was my attempt to capture, some of those evenings. And then if you go to Eye of the Storm, I try to do abstract because I still believe that abstract is one of the most essential ways of learning how to see. And it's just a simple black and white shape. There's nothing necessarily unique about it. This has been explored a million times over, but literally exploring it enables me to see again in different ways. And so that's why I think abstract should be done by anyone. Children do it automatically. The very first symbol that a child makes is the mandala symbol. And this has all been proved by Rhoda Kellogg, who was the brilliant collector of child art, who started in the 40s and the 50s. And she's almost forgotten now, but she collected artwork from children all over. And she found that they all make these universal shapes and symbols as they progress in understanding pictorial representation. And she has researched it, and the first thing they do, the first human they make, the first circle they make is a mandala. And of course, the mandala is the classic universal sacred image of all religions, for the most part, have used it. From the indigenous in America all the way through all the Asians and the Indians. So all I'm saying is that when you play with just shape, you learn to enter the space that everyone's lived before, and you learn to look differently than when you go outside and look at a building or a sun or a shadow or whatever. And then right beneath that is Funny Girl, and that again is just trying to let myself have fun.
Yeah, and you have a background in comedy too, back when you were doing theater arts.
Yeah. Then I try to do, things like Bird in a Twig, which is down a couple of times. That's more representational, but strangely enough, people buy it. Not a lot of people, but it is.
Could we talk about the charities that you are supporting with your art?
It's not charities it's my nonprofit.
Okay. Could you tell us more about
what
that?
I did from the very beginning of time is, we started it when we were at the theater in Waterloo. Okay. It's livingartscore.org, and I apologize that I wasn't prepared for that.
I'm sorry, I threw you a little curveball there. We do have the site up.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, so we're good there. I want to be sure that we cover everything during this interview that you are currently doing. So with our Living Arts Corporation, we exist to bring smiles to the world, and we're on the front page with this wonderful ink drawing that was painted.
Yes, and that's a Cambodian artist, and he's very, very young, and he's a delight. And just in the time that I have been knowing him, he has become so popular. He just sold a painting for $10,000. And a very dear friend of mine has him in his name is Naknoy, and Tribe Gallery is representing him, and he's very unique in many, many ways, and he's a dear friend. So, and he really never, now his paintings are very bright colors, but he adheres to the decorative arts of the Khmer structure and culture. So.
And what does the Living Arts Corporation do?
It's done a bunch of different things. We've given housing to many housing and studio space to many foreign artists, including here in America. Where we have Shona sculptors from Zimbabwe live and work with us, and gave them studio space to carve, etc. It has, during the great floods of Colorado, when we lost massive amounts of homes, the huge flood that destroyed highways, etc., many people were without anything, and I replenished their homes and got them all the necessities that they needed for that. So all along the way, I've worked with different companies that will either give me physical donations, or we have used all of our own money towards anything. What's difficult now, which is why I started the website, is that I no longer have my businesses that I made money from to generate to help others. And then because of COVID and my divorce and et cetera, that's nothing. There's nothing I have personally that I can share with financially. And that was a struggle for me, not because I have to be able to give because it makes me feel so great, but because even if it's a tragic flaw that I've given myself away all my life in terms of my time and my attention and my expertise and my money in everything else, and it has been a tragic flaw in many ways, it is also simply the way I knew I was as a child. My parents were very, very busy, and they were writers, and they were professors, and my mother was the first radio script writer for the oldest radio station in America, on and on and on. They were busy all the time, and yet my mother made all our clothes, my father, and she designed all of our toys and made them. Our life was playful, nonstop playful. And the point of all that is that that type of thing can come if you just give people enough to where they can relax and know that they have a tool for their creativity, or a place to sleep to do it, or any of those things that the majority of us take for granted. So that's where money has gone through all the many years since 1994. And what is frustrating for me now is that I have to face my ego, because I can't give from my own funds, because there's no funds there anymore. And that's just my personal, stupid, little egotistical struggle I have to go through. You know, we all like our little silly identities that we create.
Well, you do have this website, and if we click on the What We Do tab on the Living Arts Corporation website, that shows more of things that Living Arts Corporation has done.
Yeah,
Earlier
go to the
on,
first clip. What is
sure,
the first one? Theater?
Theater, yes.
I've done theater all my life, and I've had to do commercial theater, commercials, and a lot of historical or organizational trade films and series of films and all that. So I've always done theater from the very beginning of time. And I did legitimate theater for a long while, and I was very, very pleased with learning the craft. And I had the great privilege of working with the brilliant Indonesian Putu Wijawa in his American premiere, and of working with people like John Reich, who started the Goodman Theaters, out programming in Chicago, one of the most important theaters in America. And he worked with us when he was late in his 80s, and he was particularly kind to me and wrote beautiful letters to me long afterwards to remind me that it doesn't matter what people think of me, because I have the gift of uniqueness that I am willing to release. And when you're in theater, it's a very controlled environment. You have to move where the director tells you, and you have to do what the director's image is and all that, in many ways. I mean, not all. There's a lot of improvisation that's allowed with great directors. But for the most part, you end up working in environments that are not very pleasant, by directors that have egos beyond the size they should be. And I couldn't stand it. And I refused to audition. I think auditioning is the most repulsive possible thing that you should do to anyone. It's just sick. It's wrong, and it's just wrong. And it reinforces the worst part of what theater should be. So I pulled from Putu Wijawa his ability to use the homeless in his plays in Indonesia. This is a man who's published gobs of books, is their biggest literary star and movie maker and et cetera, but he's brilliant. And he taught me that it's perfectly okay to break the fourth wall. And the fourth wall in theater is, of course, that invisible wall that you're not supposed to look beyond if you're in a scripted play, because you'll see the audience. Well, storytelling in theater has been around forever and a day in the world. And it has been the true way of helping us understand the steps and the problems of survival, and the celebrations of surviving, and the gods that help us survive. So theater should never have a fourth wall. Or I shouldn't say should never happen. That's very judgmental and awful, but I didn't want to do it with the fourth wall. So I found ways to do it without the fourth wall by making the collective create with me and trusting my audience. Trusting my audience. And they never abused it. Or maybe a few times egos got involved. But for the most part, they came in, let go, and experienced and participated genuinely and authentically and honestly with all of their full emotions. If they got mad, they threw things at me. If they were touched, they cried and bawled. It was just real theater. And that's what storytelling is and always has been and always really will be, whether you read it in a great book or whether you experience it in a tribal experience or a community experience. So theater that's how I got involved in theater. And that's what the Mode Theater in your wonderful town of Waterloo enabled me to have a large enough space that I could experiment without censorship.
And that's a gift that Living Arts Corporation is striving to give to others who are experiencing misfortune and calamity, as is the message I'm getting here. What I'm trying to get at in this part of our conversation is viewers who go to your website and purchase your art. What are they exactly supporting? And what it sounds to me like what they're exactly supporting is they are supporting enabling people who are undergoing periods of deprivation and misfortune to have just a little space and time of peace where they can do their own creating, where
Yes.
they can take a break from the struggle just to survive the day
Yeah.
and have a drawing or listen to something or write a story. Am I
Right.
interpreting this
You're
correctly?
absolutely right. The sad part is that I used to be able to buy them tickets to go back and forth from their country no matter where they lived, so that they could, find more markets or more opportunities or things like that. Now I have to do it very simply. It's $5 from every 15. The other $5 goes every other penny that goes from someone buying a piece of art is so eaten up in the programs that I have to pay for monthly, the software programs, et cetera, and I don't even count my time at all. But this is what I am able to do. I can't do miracles anymore. I can't send money for some child to go to school anymore. And what America, again, doesn't understand is that children don't get to go to school in a whole lot of parts of the world. They get no school. And when you know these parts of the world personally, you realize how serious the urge, the learning, the yearning is. And I mean, right before I got online on air with you, I had another friend in Africa who can't pay for their child. They have to go to these little private schools in their little villages, which are just one room, huts for the most part. I get inundated on a weekly basis with people asking if there's any way that I can help them. I used to be able to, I'll pay the tuition. Because it's never massive amounts of money in these situations. It's, $250 for a year sometimes for school. And when I was running businesses, especially before COVID, we had that way to help, and we know we would still survive. Or I had also people that would help by sending larger amounts of donations to it. For the most part, it came from just personal, what we were making. Now I don't have that, and I'm too old. No matter how hard I've tried to get a job, I must have a serious disease, and I'm an untouchable leper.
Oh dear. That's one of our prejudices is ageism.
Yes.
And when you get to be a certain age, you have to make your own work.
Yes.
By and large. And
yeah.
and go direct to the market because Yes, yes, indeed. I know what you mean. But there are ways to do it, and you have found one way to do it. And it is my very deep hope that the more word gets out about you and what you're doing right now, the more you will see the sales from your website increase.
Yeah.
At this point,
Well, thank you.
It's
because marketing is expensive and I can't afford it.
Yes, it is expensive. It is.
You know that.
But we still
But
have
thank
the
you very
internet.
much.
We still have the
And
internet.
I need, I'm sorry, I
No, go
interrupted
ahead.
you. I
That's
apologize.
all right. This is your interview,
I
not mine.
need to, again, let you know how grateful I am that there's an interest from a place that is from, decades past, that gave me a very rich environment in which to explore myself and my art. And the fact that a lot of the people that have purchased, almost every single person except one that has purchased has been a friend in the past or someone I knew in the past. A lot of them have been theater patrons, and you'd be surprised how many have been people that lived in Waterloo. So that's pleasurable, and I'm very grateful for both of you for that. So thank you.
Well, you're absolutely welcome. It's a Yeah, we can't hug, but let's imagine me hugging you at this point. If we could go to the donate tab on your Living Arts Corporation.
No, I'm not even on that side. I don't even know what page is it on. Is it on?
Oh, there we go. That's a lovely image.
Yeah, anybody can donate. And actually, two people that have roots in Waterloo donated last couple of weeks. So, and they didn't even know you were doing this. So, so they did it on their own, which was wonderful. But yeah, it's surprising. And you know what's true? I've always done these solo journeys when I was living in America on my own for months on end. And I had rules like, you don't spend money. I tried to act like the Peace Pilgrim, the woman that walked her way through America without anything. I mean, I did have a car, but I usually slept in the car unless someone invited me into their home, or I slept with the homeless under their bridges, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is that what I have found is that many of the people through my experiences that have donated to me as well as other places are always the ones that have the least financial security. Or the ones that, if they have financial security, they are going through incredible challenges themselves, either through health or incidences or accidents or relationships or whatever. They're facing huge challenges. And the people then have the awareness of the rest of the world. And so the people that have donated to me are the people that have gone through and are surviving incredible challenges, physically, mental health, cancer, all the rest. And when I do my journeys, it's the people that feed me that are the poorest, and the ones that offer me into their villages and their dinner celebrations and give me a place to sleep. It's always the poorest. And I'm not trying to make that into some romantic thing. It's just real.
It is real. It's because I forget who it was who coined the phrase, but it's called the generosity of the poor, and it's a known social phenomenon.
Yes, it is. They give more statistically than any other group. Because they get it.
On your donate section here, there's a link to the final website that I would like you to help us explore and understand, which is called Magical Cambodia. Oh,
yeah. I don't publish as often as I did, but when I went to Cambodia, before my son and I moved to Cambodia, I was trying to explore as much as possible. And I was amazed at how little the that I could get from the web um, about Cambodia that was real. I could get some academic stuff. It wasn't real recent. I could get a lot of historical stuff, and I could get a few things that were going on. Well, Cambodia now has embraced the phones, like all parts of the world have.
Sure.
And now there's massive amounts of stuff on about Cambodia. And they really know how to use social media for their own internal audience. But before I went there, I couldn't get enough. So when I got there, I said, okay, we're just going to start, whatever you learn, we're going to start writing about it. So I was joined by marvelous writers that were published writers, as well as many magnificent Khmer Americans, as well as local Khmers, as well as people that were willing to share how they catch the crickets to eat at night, and so that's where it came from. And since I left Cambodia, it's been harder and harder because I can't pay anyone to help contribute, to spend their time writing. So I write as frequently as I can, doing everything else. And I just wrote a wonderful, not that the article's wonderful, but I wrote it about a book that is a major, major contribution to the world, by Nicholas Cofield, who has been living there since 1915 and been a very important part of bringing theater and storytelling to Cambodia through an immersive experience at a place called Bamboo Stage in Siem Reap. But he has now published a beautiful coffee table book of 150 years of photography in Cambodia, through the Khmer times, through the colonial times, through all the geopolitical times. And he's got, it's a marvelous book. So that's my newest article that I wrote just last week. So I try to do things like that. And I'm writing another one right now about a film. The amazing thing about Cambodia is that the arts are literally exploding. Their movies are exploding. They have some of the finest directors and writers now in the world, finally getting major attention by Europeans, and major attention in the actual film markets. And then their visual artists. I don't think anybody's not an artist in Cambodia. They're all. So that's what that site is about, is just trying to introduce a American and Western culture to the great attributes of learning about Cambodia, because it is something beyond the majesty of their temples, which are amazing, mind-boggling. And they're finally bringing back a lot of the sculpture that was stolen and taken during the war and sold to museums. And now even the Denver Museum, and I'm not sure in the Milwaukee Museum or not, but they're having to return sculpture that belonged to the temples that they bought, because there was a man that used the war to be a greedy man, and he got away with it. And so anyway, but that's what Magical Cambodia is about, because it is a magical country, and I bow to it very deeply.
Thank you for explaining that to us. I was
You're
wondering, is there anything else that you would like to share with us about what you're doing right now with your art?
I'm trying to stay sane.
Trying to stay sane. But what do you mean?
I'm using whatever vehicle that I can have without spending money, and without having to invest, and without having to, join classes or anything else, to just use expression. And I'm trying to write too, because my whole family was writers, and I've always been deathly afraid of writing, because I grew up with everyone from Dr. Seuss all the way up and down, Carl Sandburg and everybody.
Sure.
And so I have this, you can't write crap in my head. So I'm also trying to write. I'm trying to do anything that I can totally control without leaning on anyone.
You know, I'm going to comment as my father taught creative writing for his entire professional life, and he said the first thing that he said was lower your standards and write.
Which is what I'm doing with painting. I don't judge it. I mean, I may have my attitude after seeing it,
Sure.
but it's harder to do with the written word.
Yeah.
For me,
I understand.
much harder.
I do. How are you doing with the temperature over there? Is it still 100 degrees?
Yes, but as soon as I'm off with you, the air conditioning will go off. And I've also lost all my little plants on my loggia. They have these little loggias, which are tiny little patios that are glassed in.
Uh-huh.
Because of the heat. They'd all died, no matter how much I watered them.
Oh, dear.
So, and what's even worse is the way that the Soviet kind of style construction occurs. It's all concretes and goes up, and then they put the air conditioner right into the patio. So when you go outside, you get the heat from the air conditioner, as well as the heat from the outside world.
Oh, my.
So it's unbearable. Then when I say, Jinx, you've been here too long, you work till 3 a.m, you gotta get up, take a shower, and get out. So if I don't, I mean, it's easy to do if I have the grandchild because you're kind of forced into that.
So in closing, you've mentioned that what you would like to share with us about your art is that you are trying to stay sane and work within some very limiting circumstances. And again, as seems to be your pattern, you're branching out into another field of creative endeavor, which is writing, and you're getting your started by writing articles and putting them on the Magical Cambodia site. So it seems that that's one way that you respond to your drives is to branch out yet again creatively. I applaud you for that.
Oh, thank you.
I want to thank you very, very much for the few hours of time you have given us for the interview and for all of the photographs that you have sent, which are part of the lengthy introduction that viewers have seen before our actual interview. Thank you so very much. And
thank you.
And with that, I'm going to bid you a very fond farewell and let our viewers know that you are watching WLOO CATV's Resident Artist Program. We have been learning from and listening to former Waterloo resident Jinx Davis. If you or anyone you know is very serious about their art and would like to share with our audience, please contact us at WLOOCATV@gmail.com. We would love to have you on our program and feature your art, whatever it may be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Laura. It's been my pleasure.